getting ready to walk on your theme park vacation. This is Go Inform Podcast, episode 77. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we're talking about how to get physically ready for your theme park vacation. My name is Sue. I'm your vacation maven here on the podcast and also the founder, author, and keeper of GoInform.net. And my mission here is to help you have a great vacation. Thank you so much for joining me once again for another episode of Theme Park Tips. This will be my last episode for a while, probably until the fall of 2022. Just a lot of stuff going on, and the podcast is going to have to go on hiatus a bit. But you can still find me and still keep up with what's going on. One of the best ways is to subscribe to my twice monthly newsletter. It comes straight to your email box, and it is kind of like a little mini blog post with extra tips to help you have a great trip, plan for your trip. Sometimes it's news, so it's meant to just keep you informed, even if I'm not here talking in your ears. So the way to subscribe to that is to go over to goinform.net/newsletter and add your email address to the list. So this topic is very popular on the website. I have a post there about walking distances in Disney World and Universal Orlando. That's actually one of the most popular articles on the whole website. And I've never really done a post specifically about how to get ready to do all that walking. And I do have a lot of training tips in that post. And now I have added one related to Disneyland walking distances too. So it just seemed like a really good time to go ahead and get this out in audio form as well. So the link for the show notes for this episode, which is goinform.net/77, will actually take you over to that Disney World walking distances post. And you'll see a link to the Disneyland post when you get there too. So that is basically the resource that's on the site for you guys that want some reference material or maybe want to share this with somebody else that you're going to be traveling with. So what is it that you need to exactly be training for your trip? Well, the thing about a theme park vacation is that there is a lot of walking and a lot of standing. And if you've got kids in a stroller, they are probably going to spend a lot more time in that stroller than they do on your typical walk around the mall or your neighborhood or whatever. So for all those reasons, it's really important to get in some practice, get in some fitness, to make it a lot easier on yourself when you get there. So today what we're going to talk about is how far you can expect to walk when you go on a trip like this, what kind of gear you might want to have to make things easier on yourself, on your body, and how to prepare yourself and your fellow travelers and how to make that a fun thing to do. Okay, so let's talk about some of the distances that you're going to encounter when you go on your trip. Depending on which park you go to, some have more walking than others, some are bigger than others, but no matter what, you are going to be, over the course of several days, you could walk an entire marathon worth of distance. So you really need to kind of have a sense of how far apart things are and how you can structure your day to try not to do a bunch of backtracking and extra walking. So just to give you an idea in terms of a couple of I'm just going to give you a few distances in different parks. I've got a big list with a lot more information on the website. So if you go to the show notes, you can see more of this. But let's start with Magic Kingdom at Disney World. In Magic Kingdom, you will actually walk about a quarter mile just from getting off the Disney bus to walking to the main gate. That's before you even get in the park. And then once you get in the gate, it's about another quarter mile up to the castle. If you walk all the way around the park, just all in one direction, you don't really go on any rides because guess what? More walking when you're standing in line. You'll probably walk about 1.5 miles just to kind of do a loop around Magic Kingdom. Walking across the park, 0.5 miles to get across. Like, for example, walking from Space Mountain over to Big Thunder Railroad, 0.4 miles. So you've got pretty big distances in Magic Kingdom. But Magic Kingdom actually is one of the smaller parks. When you get over to Epcot, you can easily walk several miles just kind of going from one end of the park to the other. The loop going from the front gate and then around World Showcase and back to the front gate is 1.7 miles. That's no detours, no stopping. The actual World Showcase loop that goes around the lake there, that's about 1 mile. Walking across the kind of front part of the park between Test Track and Soarin' is almost 3/4 mile. I hope I'm not totally scaring you guys, but I just really want to give you a reality check of the kind of distance you're going to be walking and, you know, how important it is to get ready for it. Let's go over to Universal Orlando for a minute and see how far apart things are there. Now, the two parks at Universal Orlando are smaller than Epcot. They're probably closer to the size of Magic Kingdom. So that will be reflected in the distances you're going to walk. The walk around, like if you do a loop around Islands of Adventure, it's about 1.2 miles. Here's something that's really important to know if you are planning to get there early and go straight to the castle or Diagon Alley. It's about 0.5 mile from the gate to either the Gringotts Bank ride in Universal Studios or from the gate to Hogwarts Castle in Islands of Adventure, about 0.5 mile. So it's a hike. Be ready for it, and it won't be horrible, but you just need to be ready. So Disneyland is similar to Magic Kingdom in terms of size. So if that's your destination, you can expect to walk about 1/4 mile from the gate to the castle, going across the park from Tomorrowland to the Haunted Mansion is about 1/3 mile. If you do a loop all the way around Disneyland, including Galaxy's Edge, it's about 1.5 miles. So the thing to know here is if you can avoid crisscrossing the park and backtracking, it's going to save you a ton of steps. And in terms of, how do you decrease your overall distance that you're going to walk in a day? That would be my top tip. Have a plan, look at a map before you go. I have maps of the parks that you can actually download and print on these posts on the website. So again, just type in goinform.net/77. It'll take you to the Disney World post, which has a link to the Disneyland park maps as well. But, look at those maps and think about that plan when you're deciding how you're going to tackle your day. Because if you can kind of do Tomorrowland mostly all at once and then go to Fantasyland mostly all at once, instead of going across the park 1,000 times, then you're going to do a lot less walking. It's not always practical. You're probably going to end up doing some crisscrossing, but if you can minimize it, your feet will totally thank you. Some of the other tips I would give you for, saving your feet. One is use the transportation provided. So not all the parks have interior transportation. The best example of parks that do are Disneyland Park and Magic Kingdom, because they have the train that loops around the park and it has multiple stops. So if you do need to get from Fantasyland to the front gate, you can take the train, and which is always fun anyway, instead of walking. And that can also help you avoid crowds, especially if it's like fireworks time or parade time. So use the train to your advantage. Staying close to your park that you know you're going to be spending a lot of time in, that's a good tip too, especially at Universal and at Disneyland, because you're probably going to be staying fairly close to the parks. At Disney World, you're probably going to have to take transportation to get to most of the parks. Nothing is close to all of them. But keep in mind that if you go to Disneyland, you're probably going to walk to the park from wherever you're staying. And at Universal Orlando, if you stay in one of the Express Pass resorts, those are walking distance from the park too. Now, they have boats you can take, and there's other transportation too. But if you just want to be able to walk to the parks, at Universal Orlando, the answer is the Hard Rock Hotel. It's really close. I do have hotel guide posts, and I've talked about them here on the podcast. So if you scroll back in the archives, you can learn more about the hotels at Universal and at Disney World. Be mindful of how much walking you're doing today, because it's going to have a cumulative effect every single day of your trip. So if you go overboard on your distance you walk on Monday, and then Tuesday you have a pretty busy day too, by Wednesday your feet are going to be really, really tired. So try to moderate what you're doing day by day so that you don't just end up completely exhausted by the end of your trip. Now, the next tip I want to share is basically about gearing up. Just like so much else I talk about here, preparation is such a key for a theme park vacation. And don't forget to have the right gear so that you will be comfortable, so that you will stay safe and not hurt yourself. And the top thing to think about is your shoes. I highly recommend bringing shoes that you could literally run a marathon in. Get yourself, if you don't already have nice running shoes, invest in a pair of marathon-worthy running shoes. Get them before you go so you can get some miles on them. You can try them out. You make sure you're not going to have blisters. You don't have any other issues with them. And make sure that everybody else in your group has good, comfortable shoes too, because that is the number one thing that's going to cause you to have a problem, is wearing the wrong shoes. I also advise that you bring 2 pairs of good running shoes, because if one of them gets wet on a ride or in the rain or whatever, then you have a second pair that you can switch out when your shoes are wet, and then allow those shoes to dry. You do not want to put wet shoes on in the morning. Trust me, I have had this experience. I learned from it, and I want you guys to learn from it too, not the hard way like I did. So 2 pairs of good shoes for everybody in your group is well worth the investment. Even the kids in your group, I mean, almost more especially, make sure your kids are wearing shoes that aren't going to cause them blisters and stuff like that. Because sometimes kids won't even notice these things until it's sort of too late. So get them shoes that will really support them and keep their feet dry and comfortable and cushioned and all those good things. And socks make a difference too. You know, this is a great time to get some brand new socks. There's nothing better than new socks, if you ask me. And especially socks that really fit your feet. Don't bunch up. Don't slide down in your shoe when you walk a long distance. Get yourself some nice socks. It's especially if your trip is happening sometime after like Christmas or Easter or whatever. Put socks in the stockings for everybody for Christmas if you've got a trip coming up. These are the perfect little sort of pre-trip surprise gift everybody appreciates. So make sure you get some decent socks and enough pairs for every day of your trip. Be prepared for blisters just in case. Pack some blister bandages. There's all kinds of specialty. It's basically like a Band-Aid, but it's cushiony for blisters. Get yourself some of those and throw them in your park bag. I put a link to some that I've used before in the post, both of the Disney World and Disneyland post, so you can see those there. But bring some stuff along just in case you get a blister, because you do not want to be dealing with that just by rubbing it every day for your whole trip. You want to have something that can cushion it. And the top thing that you can do, you guys, to be ready, feel good, and not totally burn out is to train ahead of time for your trip. So start walking now. If you're not walking a lot right now, start ramping it up. You should try to get to where you can walk for a couple of hours without, you can stop and get a cup of coffee or whatever, but a couple of hours walk distance-wise will at least get your body ready. Because the fact is that when you're on a theme park vacation, you could walk for 8 hours. I don't expect you to do an 8-hour long walk in your own neighborhood, but if you can do an hour or two in a shot and be doing that a few times a week, right before you go, that is going to really pay off. Not only are you going to feel great because you're getting that exercise, but you will know if your shoes are working for you. You'll know if the socks are right. Go with the other people who are traveling with you so you can judge, especially like your kids, like, are they going to be able to handle this? Do they need more practice? If you're bringing your kids in the stroller in the parks, make sure that you take them on these long walks too. They have to get used to being in the stroller for, hours at a time, as opposed to a few minutes or whatever that you might use the stroller for now. So get out there and walk. And I know that it's like you can be enthusiastic about it for a while, but it's hard to keep it up. So I try to think of ways to entertain myself when I'm doing these kind of things. And one of the ways for me is to sort of gamify it. So I made bingo cards and you guys can download them and print them. If you, again, just go to the show notes, goinform.net/77, and you'll find some downloadable PDFs. And there is a bingo card for Disneyland and one that's got the Orlando parks on it. And basically what it is just every square is a distance that's in the parks. So, for example, it's 0.4 miles to walk from the gate at Disneyland to the Small World ride. So when you're walking in your neighborhood, when you walk 0.4 miles, instead of just being like, oh, we walked 4 blocks, you can be like, hey, we already walked to Small World. And then you can check it off on the bingo card. And, you can do this a lot of different ways. You could bring the bingo card with you if you want to just track your distance while you're walking, or you can use an app or like a smart watch or something to measure your distance on your walk. And then when you come home, you can check it off. You can figure out which boxes, how many squares you walked that day. You can use the bingo card to just get a bingo all in a row, or you can try to do a blackout. The Disneyland bingo card, for example, totals 13 miles. So that's about a half marathon. And that is probably actually, I have almost in one day walked that far at Disneyland before. But probably for most people, that is easily 2 days worth of walking. So, if you can black out that bingo card in the period of like a week, then that's a really good start of getting your feet ready and getting your mental state ready too for all of that time you're going to be on your feet. I'm hoping too that these bingo cards will help get your kids more excited about going for the walks. So, and you can talk about like each distance, like how far is that in your neighborhood to go between the castle and the Millennium Falcon or whatever, The way I got these distances is basically from going on Google Maps and, having it tell me how far apart things are. You can do the same thing. If you want to really dive into it, get Google Maps out, ask it to give you walking directions between things and see what the distances are. You can take this as far as you want. But the main thing to know is just the more that you can prepare now, the better off you're going to be when you get on your vacation and you're actually in the parks. The last thing I would add is that it's really important to know if somebody in your group is just not going to be able to do this kind of walking and time on their feet. Not everybody is physically able to do this kind of thing for any number of reasons. So be realistic. And, if you aren't sure, then, try going on some longer walks and see how it goes. But there is no shame in renting a scooter, renting a wheelchair, doing what it takes to still be able to get around the parks without being on your feet. And it's really great if you know all of this ahead of time, because you don't want that to be a surprise when you get there. You can rent a scooter in the park. You can rent it right when you get there, right at the front gate. Or you can go through a third party and have something delivered to your hotel or to the parks. So you don't have to deal with it first thing in the morning. It'll already be handled. So there are plenty of resources to help with mobility for people who need that assistance. So be sure to be mindful of that and think about it ahead of time so you can make plans for the people in your group who maybe aren't going to be able to walk a half a marathon in 2 days. If they can work up to it, if you've got plenty of time and they can train for it and try to get there, that's fantastic. But also just be realistic and plan for an alternative way of getting them around if you need to do that. So hopefully I've given you guys some inspiration, some tips for making your feet happy at the parks and making your days a little bit easier when you're there. Thank you so much for listening to the show. It's been a great first half of the year chatting with you guys and hearing from you. And I look forward to more episodes. You'll probably won't hear from me again till the fall, but if something comes up that I think I want to talk to you about, I will post it here. So make sure you're subscribed to the show on your podcast player so that you don't miss the next episode whenever it comes out. And when you're on the website looking at all those park distances and getting your bingo cards, please be sure to subscribe to the newsletter over there. You'll see a tab right at the top of the page that says subscribe, and probably a few other spots will pop up offering you a chance to get onto the mailing list. So please do so we can stay in touch throughout this summer. You guys are awesome. I hope you have a fantastic vacation and a great summer. And I will talk to you soon.